Okay. Hello, beautiful souls. I was experiencing some tech glitches, which are not unexpected given that we currently have Mercury who's still retrograde. So, my apologies for the delay in getting this live started. It's also on another stream as opposed to the one I had scheduled, again, due to the tech glitches. But it's kind of like a portal hop. I had the initial thumbnail and video scheduled, but the universe had us create our own portal into this live stream. So hopefully, those of you that are interested in watching this, join in when you can. And of course, the replay will be made available. So I'm happy to be here. It's been a while since I've been on to talk about the energies as I usually do. A lot has been moving in my personal world. I've had other projects take center stage and require more of my energy. But I'm happy to be here today on the Lionsgate portal to talk about the transits we've been moving through because we've been moving through quite a lot. So we are going to unpack it. I will do my best to speak to them because, yes, there's a lot. And before I get into the current transits we're moving through, I also want to set the stage, pun intended, and reiterate the energies we've been moving through as a collective since the beginning of the year. So bear with me as I get through them. I did drink coffee this morning, so I'm feeling a little hyper. And I usually don't drink coffee, but I haven't been sleeping the best. And I wanted to make sure that I felt alert enough to pass along these transmissions and this medicine that wants to come through. And know that this is medicine that wants to come through in regards to the Lionsgate portal. The beautiful full moon in Aquarius will be experiencing tomorrow, as well as highlighting the keys that want to come through in regards to the retrogrades we're moving through. So we have quite a lot of ground to cover. I'm hoping that these insights are supportive to you, that they shed light and provide some confirmation. But as always, remember that you are a sovereign individual, you're a sovereign soul, and you are completely free to take what resonates and doesn't resonate. If I say something that you don't agree with, let it go. It's probably not meant for you. Now, I did mean to burn some incense as I share this transmission, but it did not happen. However, I do have some crystals here to lend some support. I have my beautiful, beautiful black tourmaline palm stone. I also have green calcite here as well, which if you're local, it is available for purchase if you're interested. So just going to put that out there. And before I get into the transmissions, I want us to take a deep inhale, hold it for a moment, and exhale out. We are Friday as I'm doing this live stream. We're wrapping up the work week for most of us and looking forward to the weekend. So just releasing any energy that's no longer serving us. Already feeling the energy of the full moon. Allowing ourselves to be here in this moment, open and receptive to what we're meant to receive in this moment. Maybe slowing down our energy a little bit, shaking it out, off, if that feels supportive for you to do so. So let's get into these transits. I'm super excited. I've written some notes. I usually don't, but there's a lot to recap on, and I wanted to make sure I gave all these energies a little bit of a spotlight. So before we get into the transits that we're currently moving through, it's important to understand the stage we've been on energetically since the beginning of the year. So, if you're interested in the reading I did forecasting the energies we'd move through each month, you are more than welcome to go listen to that reading. That's on my channel because I do offer a yearly forecast at the beginning of the year. And at that time period, I spoke of the fact that we are in a year 9. So 9 is completion. We're wrapping up learning something, but it's understanding that this is the theme for the entire year. We're in the 9 energy for this year. And with the 9 energy comes the need to tie up loose ends and to close the chapter on a lot of things. And we're going to get deeper insight on what those things are as we dive into the current transits. Also, it's understanding the Hermit is our guiding archetype right now. The Hermit in the tarot is the 9th card of the major arcana, and the Hermit is all about being guided by our own inner light. The Hermit is often depicted as an old man with his lantern, and everything else around him is dark. So, this is a year where we need to return to our own inner wisdom. It's not about seeking it in others or elsewhere, but really seeking it within ourselves. Because the other symbol that is guiding us during this year is the snake. The snake is a feminine symbol. It represents Shakti energy. Now, Shakti energy is also known as Kundalini energy and is represented by a snake that often lies dormant at the base of our spine where our root chakra is. And a lot of people pursue enlightenment or the spiritual path to attain that higher light, that higher sense of self. And it's awakening that snake and having it move through our chakras, the different energy portals that are within our vessel to, again, achieve that enlightenment and sense of just self actualization from a soul perspective. Now, with these energies guiding us, it's understanding that the main theme is introspection, is walking our own path. So, those themes, in addition to the retrogrades we're currently moving through, it's not really about moving in a direction where we might want to be building something with somebody else. That is still possible, but that building needs to happen and root in people that are heart-centered. It's heart-centered creations that are going to be rooting and starting to sprout and taking the forefront. And this symbolism is really synchronistic and important because we are on the Lionsgate portal today. And the Lion Leo season is all about the heart chakra, which we're going to get into a little later. So just to wrap up, setting the stage, we have the Hermit as our guiding archetype. So this is a slow journey. It's progress, but slow down. We can't rush, even though people might want to rush. And it is a very feminine-based intuitive year as well, with the symbolism of the snake. We are witnessing a lot of a return to the divine feminine. A lot more women who are the physical embodiment of the divine feminine are returning not only to their hearts, but to their womb spaces. And it's understanding that the womb and the heart, as well as the third eye, are feminine chakras. They are our receptive centers. We receive intuitive hits through the third eye. We receive information through the heart, and we also receive information through the gut and the sacral chakra. So it's understanding that these energy points are also going through a huge transformation this year. We might be encountering more headaches than usual. We might be encountering heart palpitations. We might be experiencing gut health issues. And it's understanding that regardless of your gender, we're going to be going through a physical recalibration in order to be able to absorb, digest, integrate, and embody these energies. And those of us that are having a hard time being open and receptive to these energies are going to encounter more challenges. And the challenges are for us to reclaim our sovereignty from a soul perspective. And we're going to dive further into that as we talk about the planets currently transiting Aries. So I think that wraps up setting the stage at least a little bit. The last thing I want to touch on is, as I mentioned, the Hermit is our guiding archetype and is represented by Virgo in the tarot. And then my brain wants to do two hops. We have Virgo present, which means there's a connection to Pisces, and we're bringing in that healer axis. For those of you that don't know, the North Node is currently transiting Pisces, and then we have the South Node transiting Virgo. So this year is the year of the healers, and it is a portal initiating us onto the healer path. And here's where we need to shed light on the fact that we are all healers. We all have Chiron somewhere in our birth chart, and Chiron represents the wounded healer. So it's understanding that from a cosmic perspective, each soul has a portal within their chart that allows them to set upon the path of the healer. Now, I mentioned that we're all healers, but that doesn't mean that we're all going to hear the call, and it doesn't mean that we're all going to answer the call. Because walking the path of the healer is something that we walk, I'd say consciously, but there are quite a few people that walk it, and it's on a subconscious level. Like you might encounter a therapist that is really well versed in spirituality, for example, but might not be aware of Chiron as the wounded healer or the healer archetype. And that does not diminish the fact that they're walking that path. And right now, it's just to bring that to light in this moment. And it's 222 on my clock. So confirmation maybe for somebody. But the theme of the healer is very prevalent for us because in my mind, Virgo is ruled by Chiron. In traditional astrology, Virgo is ruled by Mercury, but in my studies, that's just not what resonates. So we have that undertone of the wounded healer following us this year with Chiron, which is very important to bring into our awareness. And it's understanding that we're in a year 9. So there's an invitation to complete healing this year. It might not feel that way. We might really be feeling like we're going through the ringer because a lot of us are, but it's understanding that we are burning through a lot of karma. We're being offered opportunities for deep soul healing, and this is to prep us for next year and the years to come. And we're going to touch a little bit on what's to come, especially when it comes to Chiron. So setting the stage, we're on the path of the healer, but this is the path of the introspective healer, the healer that is not afraid to look at themselves, to challenge themselves, and to face discomfort. And I think it's really important to highlight discomfort being a key theme. Now, for those of you that have been in my space for a little while, you know I'm not a fan of the love and light and the spiritual bypassing that tends to happen in these communities because it's just not accurate. And it usually demonstrates an inability to deal with darkness, but more than that, an inability to process and self-regulate. So with that being said, we are going to touch on the nervous system as well today because it's a theme that's been coming up a lot for me. And interestingly enough, this theme, this energy, this transmission came through right before Uranus shifted into Gemini. So the synchronicity is not lost on me. We are going to circle back to that. But we do and are being called to look at our nervous system. So if that's not something you've explored, I encourage you to. And it's understanding that it's the deeper level beneath the feelings and the thoughts. So we're going to dive more into that shortly because we have to. This is part of the work. This is part of the healing journey. And you can't heal and regulate unless you're willing to face what makes you dysregulated and uncomfortable. we cannot continue to avoid. Now, I'm kind of tempted to go on a rant here, but that is not the direction I want to move in right now. So we're going to leave it at that and see if it wants to come up later. So, with that being said, Aries. Aries, the divine spark, the light, the aspect of source made manifest here in the physical. There's a lot transiting Aries right now. And it's important for us to understand that Aries rules the first house. It's the house of self, it's our ego, and it's the overall energy that was with us at our birth on the horizon. So, whatever your rising sign is coloring and alchemizing itself with Aries energy because Aries rules the first house. And this is where you will find your rising sign. So, it's understanding the alchemy that's taking place within your own birth chart as we have these planets transiting Aries. And this is regardless of if you have Aries in your first house or if you don't. It's understanding that through an energetic psychic lens, wherever you have Aries in your birth chart, it is energetically connected to the first house and it is connected to your rising sign. So, this is why these retrogrades might be feeling personal for a lot of us because it is. We have huge collective planets transiting this house of the ego, of the self. And this is to encourage the collective to go through a purge when it comes to their sense of self and to release false identities, masks, beliefs that might be disempowering. And this is where it kind of gets sexy and fun because of the planets that are transiting Aries, at least in my mind. So we're going to get into that. And the first one that wants to come through is Saturn. I had in my mind to start with Chiron, but Saturn is coming through because it ties in beautifully with the energy of Aries. And Aries is that divine spark, and it is fire. It's understanding that Aries is a bearer of the flame of purification, along with its fellow fire signs. And it's understanding that wielding fire is not for everybody. Fire can destroy, but it can also provide warmth and allow us to cook food and provide light. So it's understanding that, sorry, I think I have a hair or something hanging, bothering me. Okay. It's understanding that fire energy is the sacred bearer of the flame of purification. And with that bearing comes great responsibility, which is the perfect gateway to introduce Saturn. Saturn is a big planetary giant and often gets a bad rap. A lot of people are terrified of Saturn. You hear a lot of people be terrified about Saturn returns, which you experience around 30 years of age, 60 years of age, 90 years of age. And it's understanding, like, I don't know, I love Saturn energy. And yeah, he's going to come through and fuck up your life if you're not living in alignment with who you're meant to be at a soul level. If you're not in proper alignment with your destiny and the character that Saturn is trying to create and structure within you, yeah, shit's going to hit the fan in your life. And that's why we often experience Saturn's energy for a first time around 30 years of age. There's a reason for that. And it's because usually around 30s, we start to mature. We start to anchor into who we know ourselves to be. I know for myself, I certainly felt the shift from my 20s into my 30s, and I feel a lot clearer, more grounded, more confident in my 30s than I did in my 20s. And I believe that this is all cosmically orchestrated so that we can be open, receptive, and willing to receive Saturn's wisdom. So with that being said, Saturn transiting Aries, it's hard because it's forcing us to look at all the areas in which we have currently failed or had a hard time acknowledging self responsibility, self mastery, and maybe some self discipline. And I'm not saying that we've all failed, but any shortcomings we might be experiencing, this is the place to look. If shit's hitting the fan in your life, look at where you might be evading or avoiding self responsibility, self maturity as well, because Saturn is maturation, both emotionally and physically. And if these are aspects that you are struggling with, it's Saturn lessons that have yet to be integrated and embodied. And it's interesting that the both emotional and physical maturation wanted to come through, because Saturn rules Capricorn. And Capricorn is depicted as the sea goat. It has a fish tail and then the front part of a goat. And this is because Capricorn represents mastery over both the emotional and the physical world. And this is where it gets interesting. Just a little side note, Capricorn is often viewed as being obsessed with the material world, and they often tend to do very well in that area of their life, but they tend to really struggle with the emotional part of it, demonstrating a disconnect within a lot of Capricorns, because ultimately, in the highest soulful expression of that zodiac, we find mastery over both realms. And with Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, transiting Aries, we are being gifted an opportunity to self master in both those areas, emotionally and physically. So, emotionally, that means being able to effectively feel into our emotions and effectively communicate and express them. It also means being able to self regulate as well. And it's interesting because we're having this earthy, watery energy transiting a fire placement. So we're getting a mix of stuff. So collectively, we might be feeling a mix of stuff. We might be having a really hard time with our nervous system. And we might be feeling a lot of discomfort when it comes to all these areas, the physical, the emotional, and not really knowing how to process. And this is, again, where we can lean on Saturn for support, structure, order. Any area where we're feeling discomfort, we need to face. And this is where we can lean on Saturn, but also call forward the lion. We are the Lionsgate portal today, and we're in a period where the sun is transiting the collective's heart. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about the Lionsgate being like bullshit and all these things. And then there's all these other freaks on the other side of the spectrum that are like, manifest your life, everything like that. And I say freaks in the most loving way possible because I'm also my own freak. But ultimately, we need to be discerning and figuring out for ourselves what this portal means. And essentially, to me, it's an opportunity for us to tune into the heart space. And the heart space is hard to tune into for a couple of reasons. And the primary one is due to conditioning, followed by the current society we find ourselves in. We live in a patriarchal society, though that is collapsing, and that's its own story. But patriarchy has made it that we have privileged, preferred masculine traits, and that is the mind. It has favored and privileged being disconnected from emotions. It has privileged and favored being disconnected from our emotions in a lot of us. Men in particular have had this conditioning the worst. And it's understanding that part of the healer's path is to look at this conditioning, these beliefs. We need to journey from the mind down into the heart, and that this isn't easy and is often uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable because of the conditioning. We have not been taught how to self regulate for a lot of us. A lot of us are maybe emotionally volatile or emotionally avoidant, suppressed. But with Saturn transiting Aries, we need to be self responsible for our emotional state, whether you are volatile and reactive or if you are severely suppressed and avoidant. You need to look at all of that and everything in between where you don't feel you are empowered in your expression. And this is the key, is how you feel when it comes to you expressing yourself. Do you feel good? Do you feel connected to your emotions? Do you feel that you are successfully regulating them, giving them a voice? Because that's the other thing. Due to conditioning, a lot of us have been taught that certain emotions are bad and others are good. But here's the thing, emotions and feelings is a spectrum. If you are denying some emotions, you will not be able to access the other part of the spectrum, because that's how a spectrum works. If you're avoiding shame, guilt, anger, disgust, it's going to be hard to tap into joy, passion, love, intimacy, because you're disconnected. And this is where we get into spiritual bypassing. People prefer the more positive emotions, or just look at it from a positive lens. And I hate to break it to you, if you tend to be a bypasser or I keep it positive, that's not part of the human experience. The human experience is just that, experience. And that means you came here to experience spectrums, to experience everything. And that means all emotions. And the mastery comes forward when you're able to regulate along the whole spectrum. Anger, you're able to regulate. Sadness, you're able to regulate. Grief, rage. This is where Capricornian, Saturnian emotional self mastery comes through. It is not through avoidance. It is not through filtering emotions through the mind. And it is not emotional reactivity either. And it's certainly not bypassing or keeping it positive. Mastery happens through moving through discomfort, because that's another thing that people tend to avoid, is the discomfort, and you feel it in your body first. You feel the emotional reactions because the energy is trying to move and circulate. And this is where we get to the physical part of Capricorn. And it's because we feel the emotions in our body first. Our throat might tighten. Our heart might start to race. We might feel a pit in our stomach. And mastery happens when we're able to go over that edge and keep our throat open, breathe, speak, and express what we're feeling. But we don't get to this level of maturation, of mastery, through doing breath work and meditation. Now, these tools help for sure. They have tremendously helped me regulate on my journey. But the keys to mastery is having those discomfort, uncomfortable situations. It's having those hard emotional conversations. And I've noticed for myself this year, it's been a year of difficult conversations with a lot of my loved ones. And it's put my nervous system to the test. Am I self regulated enough to remain centered as best I can and hold space for whatever emotion needs to be expressed in that moment and be able to effectively express it? So, this is one of the biggest undercurrents we are currently experiencing with Saturn transiting Aries. And it's also important to note that Saturn is currently retrograde, which means this energy is self directed. We have an opportunity to really tune in and, what's the word? Not sharpen, but fine tune this skill, this embodiment, this integration physically of our emotional experiences. And this is Saturn's gift, emotional and physical maturation and mastery within the self while he is transiting Aries. Whew. I just want to take a moment to thank Saturn because that was a big transmission that wanted to come through. Now, along his path, he is going to dip into Pisces. We're not going to cover that here. We're going to let this Papa Saturn wisdom sink in because we deserve it. And it's understanding that this energy that's coming through, this is mature paternal energy at its finest. Saturn, as the father figure, wants his children to be self-disciplined, wants his children to be self-responsible. And those abilities truly become integrated and embodied and perfected through a soul lens, through emotional and physical mastery. So if life is difficult for you right now, personally, this is a big soul lesson that we're wrapping up as a collective. Whew. Okay, I think, damn, I think that's it. That wraps Saturn's energy up. Feel free to share with me in the comments how you're experiencing Saturn. And it's also understanding, lastly, that our cardinal signs are going to be experiencing this the most because Saturn is transiting a cardinal sign. And he is going to be asking us to face these chains and these limitations we've been placing upon ourselves and asking us, can you release the chains? Can you release everything into the flames of purification and transformation so you can reemerge and be reborn anew? Whew. I'm just going to take a sip of water. Whereas though I had Neptune next, Chiron wants to come through. Whew. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, Chiron is the wounded healer. And we all have Chiron somewhere in our chart, which creates that portal into deep soul healing for each and every one of us. And with the wounded healer transiting Aries, where he's been for quite a while now, we are being asked and called upon to step on the path of the healer because the world more than ever needs healers, and it needs integrated embodied healers, not the fake ones that bypass, that dismiss your emotional reality or how you're feeling. They're the ones that see you for where you are at, but they hold their frequency of mastery, giving you the opportunity to rise and meet them there. And the vision I am getting is that of the priest or priestess in the temple. The temple is open, and it is up to you if you want to go to the temple. And I'd say receive healing, but receiving healing is not really what is happening. It's more so gifting yourself the opportunity to receive your own healing through you stepping onto the path of the healer. So with that being said, with all these transits moving through Aries, the self is at the forefront right now. And it's understanding that as I was reflecting on this, this is not even the work yet. This is the pre-work that is going to determine if the work that's coming, you move through effortlessly and it feels almost as a breeze. I can't say guarantee because there's probably still going to be shit. It's just part of this experience. But if you are willing to do the pre-work now, really allow these transits moving through the house itself, psychically moving through your rising sign, Chiron's shift into Taurus, that's going to be happening in 2027, is not going to hit you as hard as those avoiding the work right now. I'm saying the work because Chiron's been in Aries for a while now, retrograding and going direct. And he's retrograde right now. So again, this is an opportunity for us to slow down and reflect on what we've been experiencing, moving through, and where we still hold the victim mentality. The victim archetype wants to come through right now, and it's interesting because it's bringing in that Virgo energy. And as we talked about earlier, Chiron rules Virgo. So with the South Node being in Virgo right now, we are being called to culminate, close the chapter on perfectionism, self-criticism. If these are still active themes coming up in your life, you're afraid to be messy. You need to have it together all the time. Look to where Virgo sits in your birth chart. Look to that healer's axis, Virgo and Pisces, and see what area of life do you need to facilitate healing for yourself. And also look to your Chiron placement, because again, as an intuitive psychic reader, I'm constantly looking at the energy of a birth chart. I'm not an astrologer. That's not how I read. I allow the planets to come to life and to speak. And right now, with Chiron being in Aries, we are being reminded of the victim archetype. And for a lot of us who have not mastered Virgo energy, which ultimately is the energy of the healer, we're going to default into the disempowered version, which is the victim. So we are being called to look at this. Where are you still victimizing yourself? Where are you still refusing to be responsible for your power? Because a lot of the time, victims stay stuck in this self-defeating energy because they're unwilling to be responsible. Because it's easy to be like, oh, it's poor me. It's that happened to me and my life shit and this and that. And it's realizing that you're refusing to take accountability and active engagement in what's happening to you, which means you're not empowered at all. An empowered person is active when they need to be. They are self-reliant. They are self-responsible. These are pillars of sovereignty. And if these pillars are weak in your life, you're going to feel weak in these areas, especially where Chiron is and where Virgo sits. So again, Chiron transiting Aries right now, he is gifting us an opportunity to really deal with our fucking shit. And this is your reminder that if you haven't been dealing with your shit, Chiron's going to keep just like being like, are you enjoying ingesting this poison that you are feeding yourself? Because ultimately, victimhood is a form of poison. It keeps you from your sovereign self. It keeps you from expressing who you truly are. And I say truly because at a soul level, at a heart level, we're not victims. We are free. We are sovereign and we are loving also. And it's understanding that if these are aspects that you have a hard time expressing, it's because there are energetic distortions that need to be looked at. And again, Chiron is a very patient teacher, as is Saturn. They're both very patient. And it's understanding that they're gifting us the opportunity to heal. Otherwise, as I said, as Chiron shifts into Taurus in 2027, we can anticipate more of a physical reckoning because Chiron's going to be leaving the first house, the house of the divine spark, to enter into the physical world through Taurus. Now, Taurus rules our house of values. It rules our assets and it rules our finances. So view this as a foresight that if you're not doing the pre-work in regards to yourself, your finances are going to bear the consequences in 2027. Now, good news for those of us actually looking at our shit, doing the inner work with an open heart, facing the discomfort with an open heart, or at least a willingness to, 2027 is going to really unfurl and blossom. And again, this is the healer in the house of finances, of value, of character development too, and character strengthening, positioning. So a lot of people walking upon the healer path are really going to start to reap rewards and benefits. For those of us that are like, when is it going to be my turn? For a lot of us, it's going to be in 2027 when Chiron leaves the house of self and starts transiting the second house. For those of us that have been doing the inner work while Chiron's been transiting Aries, it's going to go really well. For those of us that haven't been doing the work, it's going to hit us in a wallet. I said hit us in a wallet, which was really interesting when I meant hit us in the wallet. Again, physical. For those of us refusing to wake up, refusing to hear the call, it's going to hit you where it hurts. And for most people, unfortunately, it is in the wallet. So with all that being said, Chiron is giving us the opportunity to tie up loose ends when it comes to healing ourselves. And as I said, Chiron rules Virgo. Virgo is the gut. Now, the nervous system is throughout the whole body, but we have a strong receptive center in our gut area. And if you're not dealing with stuff, you're not facing discomfort because it's uncomfortable, you're avoiding it, or you're being overly reactive, things aren't going to go well. But at the same time, this is where we need to release Virgo perfectionism. It's understanding that discomfort, emotions are messy, and we will fuck up. This is where we need to do our best to hold ourselves with compassion, hold ourselves with an open heart, but also hold others with an open heart. And this is the medicine that Leo is bringing forward for us. With the sun being in Leo, we are illuminating our hearts. How can we hold divine love for ourselves as well as others? Now, people tend to think that love is squishy, soft, and it is. But let's not forget, the heart is represented by the lion, and the lion knows how to roar. It knows when to bare its teeth and show its claws. So this isn't naive love. It's mature love. It's grounded, self-mastered love in the sense that you're able to express how you feel, but also set boundaries. And with that boundary energy coming through, we are getting Saturn circling back and being like, with your self-respect, self-discipline, are you able to set healthy boundaries with people crossing lines with you? People maybe not meeting you where you want to be met. And this is where we get into emotional intimacy. If you're having a hard conversation with a loved one, for example, it's setting up the parameters for that conversation to take place. You can do the pre-work, which is setting intentions if that feels supportive, maybe calling upon your guides, your ancestors, using supportive crystals or what have you. Because it's understanding that as a collective, we need this work to be done. So doing pre-work, pre-support, if that is helpful to you, do it. But then when it comes to actually having the hard and difficult conversation, feel free to express that you want it to be a heart-based conversation and understand that the other person you're meeting might not be ready. And again, this is where we're getting Saturn energy coming through. There needs to be self-respect there. If the other person cannot meet you there, you need to have enough self-respect to say, hey, I love you. A conversation needs to be happen, but I want it to happen in a space where we can be emotionally vulnerable and intimate. I don't feel that that is the case. Let's postpone our conversation for now. And you see, it can be expressed in a way where we don't let our own emotions get the best of us, but we're still setting a boundary, a standard that needs to be met. And that is okay. This is where we get that perfect harmonic balance between having an open heart and yet being self-mastered. And this is one of the key energies following us through the Lionsgate portal, is the open heart, willing to meet the other, but they need to be willing to meet us there too. As I say, that was a lot for Chiron to come through. And I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the pain that a lot of you might be experiencing or moving through, because I am feeling it. There is a lot of pain still in the collective heart. And it is calling upon its healers, its transmuters, its alchemists to help move this density out, because we have a lot of divine light pouring through, especially during this portal. And the universe needs people that are open and receptive to it. And this means souls that are willing to not only do the work, but to face the discomfort on emotional levels and physical levels. Now, of course, if you feel unsafe, like that's a completely different matter. Like I do want to put that caveat. Like if you feel royally unsafe or it's like your life is in jeopardy, like please don't engage or facilitate a conversation or anything. Like use your judgment here. I do want to throw that out there. But if it's discomfort because like there's hurt behavior, there's been hurtful words, navigate that as best you can, knowing that there are favorable transits supporting you and having those conversations. But even though these transits are favorable, they are passing through the house itself. And it's asking that you do the work to integrate and embody it as best you can first, because that's the other thing. We're still getting that Virgo archetype coming through, perfectionism, and it's understanding that it's not going to be perfect right away. You know, you might raise your voice a little bit. You might say something hurtful. This does not mean you failed. It means you are showing up. You are willing to be vulnerable and show up and recalibrate to a different frequency through that experience. And again, this is where mastery happens. It happens in the experience itself. And this is where I might have sounded like I was shit talking breath work and meditation, though I do meditate, because it keeps you away from these situations. It helps to develop the skills you need to face these situations. Like ultimately, like that's what they're for. But you can't use them to avoid hardship. And this one last time, it might come back again, is where bypassing happens, is where we get overly focused on our spiritual practices and tools, thinking that they are our life when they are tools. And I know there's a lot of people in spiritual communities that hide behind these practices, these tools. And I've encountered quite a few of them. They hide behind their breath work, their yoga, yet they're still not regulated, or they avoid hardship. They avoid hard emotions and they want to keep it positive all the time. And it sheds a light on the lack of integration and embodiment and work that still needs to be done. Because ultimately, yoga, meditation, breath work are tools. They are not a personality. So, with that being said, we've got mysterious, illusionary Neptune coming through. So, we've also got Neptune to toss in and add to our salad right now. And mind you, I hate salads. I don't like lettuce. But, anyways, Neptune. Neptune is transiting Aries as well. So, with Saturn, we had that father energy come through. Now, Neptune is kind of not a shapeshifter, but a bit, and I don't know if this is the right word to use, but like non-binary. The energy is, it flows, it's fluid. Sometimes when I interpret Neptune, it is Poseidon that's coming through, the god of the ocean. But lately, it's been more like Grand-Mère Soul from Pocahontas. So that softer grandmothy energy coming through. So it's interesting because right now in the house itself, we're having the father archetype transiting, and maybe grandfather. Some people might interpret Saturn as grandfather transiting the first house, but we also have that grandmother energy That means the divine feminine, the ancestral divine feminine, transiting the house itself. Now, this is where it can get a little rocky and intense, because though we're being called to self master, hone our skills, restructure ourselves, which can look very masculine in appearance, we're having that intuitive, psychic, feminine energy also transiting our first house. So, Neptune, the energy coming through is mysterious, is kind of like a veil. And it's interesting because as I went and walked my dog yesterday, there had been a thunderstorm and there was mist in the field, like it was foggy and hazy. And that depicts Neptune at its finest. You can't really see, there's a haze, there's some kind of fog, it's mysterious, you're not really sure what you're seeing. And Neptune is the planet of illusions, is the planet of deception. It's the planet of lies, but it is also the planet of dreams. It's the planet of the visionary. So, with Neptune being retrograde in Aries, we are being called to look at all the areas in our lives where we are still lying to ourselves, where we are still embodying deceit, where we are entertaining illusion. Because those are the disempowered expressions of Neptunian energy. Empowered Neptune is a sharp AF intuition and psychic lens for those of us that have an interest in developing that, because we are all born psychic, but not everybody's going to have the desire to develop that ability. So Neptune transiting Aries is, forgive all that noise, hopefully it wasn't too distracting. Neptune is that psychic lens. And it's that psychic lens being turned towards the self right now, because it is also currently retrograde in Aries, which, as we've discussed, rules the first house. So we are having a very strong grandmother lens look at us. And we have the opportunity to do a lot of soul healing around the grandmother maternal bloodline, should we choose to accept. Because we are sovereign. We are free. You can choose to do the healing work or you can choose not to do it. But the cosmos are offering us a myriad of opportunities to do the healing work. And Neptune retrograde in Aries at this point in time is another offering. It's intense because there's so many offerings currently being given by the celestial bodies. It's incredible. So, for those of us that have experienced hardship with the feminine, be it women, be it sisters, our own mother, our own grandmother, female relatives, we are being gifted the opportunity to do a lot of shadow work in regards to that aspect of ourselves and our ancestral bloodline, because there is a lot of shit there. As much as I would want to unpack all the bullshit on the patriarchal side, right now it's coming through is the maternal side. And we do tie back into patriarchy, which is the suppression. I would say vilification. I don't even know if that's a word. The vilification of the feminine throughout centuries. And again, it's realizing, regardless of gender, you have both energies living within you. And it is the union of both that have created you. So agree with me or disagree, but like it just is. And how can we reach inner peace or balance when we villainize, I don't know, half of us? So for those of us that feel royally uncomfortable when it comes to emotions, maybe we avoid them completely. Maybe we find they're irrelevant, unnecessary. We are cutting off half of ourselves. We are cutting off half of our soul. And this cutoff that a lot of people experience, especially the physical embodiment of the masculine, which are our men, it is deeply soul painful because you are denying a soulful part of yourself, which is the feminine. And with Neptune transiting Aries, we are being offered an opportunity to heal the divine feminine. And it's interesting because Neptune, being a feminine polarity and energy, is transiting a masculine sign, which is Aries. So we are being given the opportunity to reach a form of union. And it's understanding that this is spiritual union because Neptune rules Pisces, and this is spirituality at its finest. It is oneness. So we're having not only grandmother energy being brought in, but that energy of higher meaning, of spirituality, of oneness, entering the house of the self, entering the house of one. So we're getting these different frequencies shifting through the first house right now. And that's why a lot of us that might not be psychically attuned to receiving all this or perceiving this might be feeling like it's a lot. And even those that are psychically attuned to all this, it is a lot because the collective self is going through a death. And this death is occurring so we can transform and be reborn. And this again ties into it being a year 9. It is a year of completion before the rebirth, which is going to happen next year. We are going to be entering into a year 10, which is the Wheel of Fortune. And I wrote this in my book earlier, and it's coming through now. When we think of children and birth, pregnancy is 9 months. We're in a year 9. And as I was reflecting on this, pregnancy is very physical. It's happening in the body, in the vessel. But then birth, that moment, remains mystery. It remains a veil. We don't all know how the labor is going to go. We don't know if it's going to be 4 hours, if it's going to be 25. That's the mystery of the birthing part. And it's understanding that it's intangible at that point in time because of its mystery. We don't know. And this is where we tie in the energy of 10. 10 is the Wheel of Fortune in the tarot. We don't know how the wheel's going to turn. We just know it's going to turn. So Neptune transiting Aries is offering us the possibility to heal the maternal bloodline, but also really attune ourselves psychically, open our channel, open ourselves to receiving these messages. And with Neptune transiting Aries, we're also bringing in that Piscean energy because, as we mentioned, we have the North Node currently transiting Pisces. And as I mentioned earlier, with the nodes transiting Virgo and Pisces, we have the Earth healer, but we also have the spiritual healer. We're having both being integrated into us at this point in time. And with Neptune transiting Aries, Neptune is facilitating the integration of the spiritual healer, in addition to the physical healer with Chiron, who rules Virgo, transiting this house. So that's why a lot of my fellow healers, though we are aware of what's going on, it's been hard as fuck out here. So if this is you, make sure you are taking care of yourself. If people are fucking up your peace, set those boundaries, take that space, and make sure you are doing what you need to feel good and to feel centered in your heart, in your being, because that's the most important. As mentioned earlier, this is the pre-work. Can you remain centered with all the bullshit that is happening? Because your level of centeredness in your heart is going to dictate how the next transits impact you. Now, again, it doesn't mean it's not going to be easy, but your resilience is going to have strengthened. Your ability to see is going to be clearer. And that's the beauty of it all. Whew. Oh, I want to thank Chiron and Neptune for coming through. Now, I did have to talk about Leo next on my list and Mercury retrograde, but I mean, Mercury is like the typical issues that we usually encounter, which are delays, miscommunications, tech issues, and it's an opportunity for us to practice patience. And this is an example that came to mind before sitting down and doing this transmission, is the fact that a lot of people ask for patience. A lot of people ask for courage. The universe doesn't give you patience or courage. It gives you opportunities to develop those aspects. So everything that is testing you and having you ask, why isn't this happening now? Why do I have to wait? The universe has chosen to gift you an opportunity to practice patience so that you may gain that skill. And same thing for courage. You're not going to wake up the next day and be courageous. Courage comes from facing things that are uncomfortable, that are difficult, that we would rather ultimately avoid or wish didn't exist. But it's understanding that we have Leo energy around us. We have very strong celestial heart energy around us at this time. And is up to us to use this energy to our advantage. Because let's be real, being human is not fucking easy. However, we can find support in the cosmos. They can help us to understand what is happening. And that understanding, I believe, provides empowerment. We can be empowered in our knowing and our understanding. Knowing and understanding full well we might not be able to change your circumstances, but having a grip on what is going on can help bring a sense of peace. And that is ultimately why I do what it is I do. Whew. Okay. So again, feel free to tell me how that's landing for you all. I would love to hear how you're experiencing these transits. We're going to go ahead and move into weird, quirky Aquarius. So I think it's today and tomorrow we have the full moon in Aquarius. And right off the bat, I'd love to know how you are experiencing this moon. What is coming up for you as the moon culminates and finishes its cycle? Feel free to have a journal handy or ready. I know maybe I should have mentioned that beforehand, but I mean, if you have it, it's nearby. Feel free to write or feel free to just hold what it is you're currently experiencing in your mind's eye, in your heart, your womb space. Because there are quite a bit of energies moving through this full moon, and it also has to do with Aquarius's planetary ruler, Uranus. So we have the full moon in Aquarius. This is illuminating where we are still holding on to a mask, an illusion. Aquarius is the kind of out there alien-like character of the zodiac. They are innovative. They are creative. They lead revolutions, especially when it comes to technology. They are ruled by Uranus, which represents awakening, electricity, lightning bolts. So it's understanding that all these aspects are coming to the forefront under this full moon. Where is your inner energy calling you to move? In what direction is your soul asking that you begin innovating, or at least envisioning what that innovation could look like? With all the retrogrades right now, we might not feel necessarily inclined to create or release creation. Some of us might, but for those of us that aren't feeling that, it's okay, because every birth, every project that becomes physical starts with a vision. And so under this full moon, we are being asked to speak into our vision, to hold our vision, and to be ultimately a safe place for our vision as well. If you have the greatest dream, yet sometimes criticize yourself for having that dream, saying, oh, it's too big, or oh, it can never happen, that is showing you where more love and compassion need to come in to fertilize your vision. Because ultimately, visions are, I don't know why that's the image I'm getting, but so struggling to find the word right now. Not a life jacket, but like, I don't know, the thing you throw into the ocean to save someone. I don't know why this is the imagery that's coming through right now, but it is a life raft. And a vision is a life raft because it's what allows you to have purpose and meaning to your life. Now, you can have multiple visions. That's the beauty of it. You can have a vision when it comes to your private life, when it comes to your professional life. But you need to be able to hold these sacred energies. And we're coming back to the imagery of women when they go through pregnancy. Ultimately, to be able to have children, your inner landscape needs to be safe. It needs to be cleansed. It needs to be clear. And this isn't to shame or guilt any woman having difficulty conceiving, because society has fucked a lot of us, which again is a whole other topic, which I'm not going to get into, but I just want to acknowledge that for a lot of us who want to conceive and can't and are having fertility issues, it's not all to do with just our inner work. A lot of it has to do with conditioning and the type of society we're growing up in. But again, I'm not going to get into it here, but we need to be a safe place. And this goes the same for these visions, these dreams. And all these transits are helping us to become that safe place, to become that plowed, fertile, rich soil in which we can plant seeds. So this full moon is asking, what is your vision? And how can you cultivate now a healthy, supportive, safe environment for those visions to be planted, root, and ultimately sprout? And it's interesting because even on my walk yesterday, as I mentioned, there was fog in the field. I looked up at the moon and she looked full, but there was a thin layer of cloud covering her, yet I still saw her luminosity come through. So I interpret the light cloud cover as meaning that there's still some light shadow work that needs to be done in regards to our vision. It could be self-doubt, self-criticism. Who am I to accomplish these things? And once again, we're having a lot of support to move through this energy. And our support is coming from, you've guessed it, if I haven't mentioned him yet, Pluto. Because though I do want to speak about Uranus, we cannot forget that Pluto is currently in Aquarius and that he is also currently retrograde. So we have the Lord of the Underworld in the house of revolution, dreams, visions. So can you do the shadow work necessary to distill your vision so that it is the clearest it can be for right now, trusting that even if you don't have all the puzzle pieces, you have enough. And this is where we can tie in to the abundance, the wealth that is available to us now. I know a lot of people focus on the Lions Gate as a portal of manifestation, wealth amplification, abundance. Those energies at their purest form are always available to us. We choose if we want to be abundant or not. And this is abundance in terms of inner wealth, soul wealth. Are you connected to your soul? Are you connected to your heart? Because this is the distilled form of these frequencies and where it emanates from before it even enters the physical world and becomes finances, assets, physical things. And so while Pluto is here, the collective is being asked to move through some shadows. And it's really interesting because we have all these transits going through the house itself on a collective basis, but then we also have shadow work happening in Aquarius. And Aquarius rules the 11th house, which is our network and international connections. And it's 111 on my clock right now for those of you that needed that confirmation. So we're kind of being pulled inwards to deal with ourselves, but also to keenly observe what is happening on the international stage as well. As understanding that Pluto is retrograde right now. So the energy is internally directed. So though some fuck shit might happen, we're not going to see a lot of that till the energy decides to go direct, which I forgot to write down exactly when. So if somebody knows when that is, feel free to share that in the comments. But it's understanding we're having these two kind of shadow work lenses. We're having the very intensive self one, but then we're also having the broader collective one. And again, as I said, I saw the moon. She had a thin layer on her. So the level of shadow work here is not as heavy, even though it might feel that way. And it might feel that way because, again, the full moon, the moon rules our emotions. So crying, having a release is so important if you want to create, sing, dance, yell. The energy needs to move. Rest, sleep, whatever your body needs, allow it. Give it to your body. Maybe you need to eat a specific dish. I don't know. But we are emotional beings and creatures. As much as some people might want to strip us from that and not have that be, we are. And the moon is the confirmation of that. Even though she is transiting an air sign where, again, we can be tempted to view our emotions through a mental lens. But it's a reminder that Aquarius is the water bearer. And this is where people get confused. Wasn't Aquarius Aqua a water sign? No, he is an air sign. And what he's pouring out is divine wisdom, divine knowledge, is life force energy, is awakening because he's ruled by Uranus. Now, we talked about Pluto. Cue in Aquarius's ruler, Uranus, who is currently transiting Gemini. He's left Taurus, where he kind of shook stuff up, especially when it comes to physical assets. You know, people started freaking out and things like that, and is now in Gemini. So, two things are happening here. I'm going to try and remember these two things, so my brain's like wired. We're having a reset when it comes to our communities because, as I said, Aquarius rules the 11th house, which is our network, it's our friends, it's international relationships. So we have Uranian energy in that house because that's the house he rules. But right now, with Uranus transiting Gemini, he's transiting the house of local communities, the third house, the house of communication, the house of siblings. So he's facilitating awakening, not only within our sibling relationships, if we have siblings, but also within our local communities. Now, with Uranus being here, being known as the Great Awakener, more and more of us might be seeking our soul tribes on a local basis, A lot of us are connected to people internationally across different countries. I know I am, and that's beautiful. But for a lot of us, we are being called to either create or find local communities in which that awakening energy can spread. And I say awakening energy because, again, this is the initial stage that ultimately, in my opinion, leads to empowerment. You need to become awake and self aware and continuously knowing that this is a journey. As much as the ego would be like, well, I finally arrived, this, that. There are points in which you will finally arrive, but it is a spiral. There'll be many periods of culmination upon your path, but then there's always going to be another. And I'm being called to talk about the tarot and the hero's journey. We see the hero begin with the Fool at card 0 and then move through all the major arcana and get to the World. But it's understanding that cycle continuously repeats itself. And every time it repeats itself, you're more mastered. And again, we're seeing that spiral. There's this sense of people wanting to just get to a final destination and be like, that's it. But again, to me, it shows a level of unease with discomfort. The desire to reach a final destination of like maybe enlightenment or whatever. But that's not the point, in my opinion. The point is to know how to regulate, how to manage effectively different situations. Once you're able to do that, then the ease comes. That doesn't mean it's always going to be effortless. There's still going to be hardship, but you're going to have the necessary skills to move through it. And it's not going to impact you as much as it did. For example, let's say you were in a deeply toxic relationship. Maybe the person walked all over you and that relationship ended. And then you go to counseling, you get support, you develop the skills to be able to effectively set boundaries in your next relationship. So then the universe comes through, says, hey, we got this guy for you. You interested? You say yes. It goes well. And then he also becomes toxic. But this time, you know how to set boundaries. You know how to speak your truth. It might not have been any easier, but you are more empowered. And that is the whole point. Empowerment through awareness and awakening progressively to who you are as a soul, what you chose to experience, and how you can develop the skills necessary to cultivate, I believe, more inner peace, balance, love. Because to me, that's what it is all about. So, final point, nervous system. Uranus rules the collective nervous system. So, energetically, we are all going through a nervous system reset. So, everybody's nervous system might be on edge, and it's understanding that there's a lot of people that have done a lot of work around emotional regulation, mental regulation, talking kindly to yourself, knowing how to navigate your emotions, especially the difficult ones. But then the layer under that is the nervous system. And this is where it gets interesting because the nervous system is the first part that is created in conception. So before you even begin absorbing your mom's thoughts and feelings, you absorb her nervous system. And it is that electricity bolt, that lightning, that life force energy. So you're absorbing that first. And then on top of that, thoughts get layered, feelings get layered, conditioning gets layered. So unpacking all that is hard. But once you get to the nervous system, you have a good handle on your emotional regulation, thought process, nervous system. And it's very, very sensitive. And as a collective, as I said, with Uranus transiting the house of local communities, siblings, we are all being asked to go through a reset. when it comes to this center. So we are all going to be feeling extra sensitive, especially for those of us that view ourselves as empaths or highly sensitives. We're going to be feeling it. And again, it's for us to do the work in regards to our nervous system so that can flood outwards and support our local communities. I mean, if you are feeling the call to start having people get together, please do it. If you are doing the work, you are a safe person, relatively speaking, you feel at peace and you are looking for that connection. People need empowered healers more than ever. They need people holding the frequency, because as you hold your frequency, it starts to emanate and pour out of you. So whether you are actively healing someone through energy work or Reiki or reading cards, you don't even need to actively heal people anymore. It's going to be through your aura and energy field that you will be doing this work, simply because you're holding the frequency. So my healers, thanks again for the sacred work you are doing. You are valued. You're needed. You are needed. You are cherished by the universe, by the cosmos, and I'm so happy you exist and are here. Take some time to digest these transmissions. I know there were a lot, even for me, processing them right now. Take some time to integrate, drink water, spend time in nature, and spend time around people that support you and genuinely love you. That pure, unfiltered love that you feel at a soul level. Because Leo is about the heart, and the best thing we can do to really absorb these energies at this time is to be surrounded by love. Until next time, I'm sending you all beautiful wishes and healing energy your way. I love you.